This is module 2 of my practical theory course. So if you didn't watch module 1, which was about the major scale and the modes of the major scale, well, just go watch that because this is going to be related to that. Now, if you're good with that and you know the modes of the major scale and the major scale itself, well, let's just start with the chords. So chord is just a cool name again for when we play two or more notes that sound simultaneously. Like for example, if we play, well, G and E is gonna be a chord. If we play C, E and G, again, it's gonna be a chord. Doesn't matter how many notes we play, they just gotta be more than one, and it's a chord. Each chord type has its characteristic interval. So what is an interval? Well, just the distance between the notes. For example, if we play from G to E, it's one interval. If we play from A to G, it's another type of interval. So don't worry about that. It's just, this is what an interval is. Now, what is the important thing is that every chord type has its different characterizing intervals. And what I mean by chord type is like a major chord, a minor chord, the same thing as a scale type, like the major scale, the minor scale, the diminished scale, and all of that stuff. So, for example, let's compare the major chord to the minor chord. And don't worry if you don't know them, I'll explain these as well. For example, the major scale, the major chord has the characterizing interval of a first note, so like the root note, the third note, and then the fifth note. And we take, like we construct the major chord. Say for example we're gonna build a G major chord. Well, we're going to start with G because this is the first note of the G major scale. Then the third note is gonna be a B, and the fifth note is gonna be a D. So G, B, and D, these three notes, doesn't matter which order they are in, they form a G major chord. For example, if we wanted to play a G minor chord, well, this is only gonna be different with one note, and it's gonna be G. We construct that taking the minor scale and just going first note, third note, fifth note again. So it's gonna be G and not B, but B flat or A sharp, depends on how you look at it, but it's the same thing. So G, A sharp, and D again. So it's only one note of a difference, but the interval from G to B sounds happier, or this is what people call it. It just sounds different from G to A sharp or G to B flat. It's the same thing. So this is the characterizing interval. This is what is important for these chord types. And every single major chord, for example, C major, it differs from a C minor with just one note, just like G major and G minor. This is universal for every single chord type. And this is how you build the major chords and the minor chords. Now, what if we wanted to build, for example, a major 7 chord or a minor 7 chord? Well, we're gonna do just this. Again, we're gonna play the major triad, so these three notes that form a major chord are called the major triad because three notes, probably in Latin or something, I'm not familiar with that. But anyway, we take the major triad, so we play G, B, D, and then we have to take the 7th note of the G major scale if we want to play a G major chord, right? So it's gonna be G, B, D, and then we're gonna play an F sharp. So G, B, D, and F sharp, they form a major 7 chord. If we wanted to play a minor 7 chord, a G minor 7 chord, again we're going to take the minor triad, the three notes that make the minor chord, the G minor for example. So we're going to play G, A sharp, D, and now F, not F sharp, but F. And this is again a new characterizing interval of the minor scale, of the minor chord, of the minor 7th chord. Now, cool, I know this is a lot to cover, but bear with me, we're gonna start doing something interesting with these chords. So you see how the major scale, the major chord and the minor chord, they only have one note of a difference. Well, the fifth is the same, right? So G, A sharp, and D, and G, B, and D. Well, they're the same thing. The D note is the same, right? Well, we can just play the two notes, the characterizing notes, so G and A sharp or G and B, and put that in riffs. And we can do that by just playing 2-note chords, and it sounds so much more interesting than just playing power chords, right? And in the beginning, in the previous module, I promised not to waste your time. So here's why I explained the major 7 chord types and the minor 7 chord types. Well, we can create arpeggios with that. And if you play just like following the major scale and you repeat that, so you're gonna play 1, 3, 5, 7, so the first note, the third note, the fifth note, and the 7th note from the major or the minor scale, then you repeat 1 octave higher, you're gonna end up with these cool arpeggios. And of course, you need to be able to sweep pick, but this is how you never forget how you're gonna play the arpeggios. Like, you know the logic behind them, so the arpeggios and the notes themselves are just a small part of it. So here's what you can do with these. And now some even shreddier stuff is the tapping, and we can follow the underlying chords of the song. For example, they're gonna play, I don't know, let's say G major and A minor, and we can follow the underlying chords not by just playing these acoustic chords that I don't give a damn about. Like, I really don't care about acoustic chords, I just want to shred when I was starting out. Now maybe it's something different, I want to learn music theory, but when I was starting out I just wanted to shred. So here's what you can do with tapping. Well, you can play these chords, so the notes of these chords, for example, the G major, what did we say it is? Well, it's G, then a B note and a D note, and we can play that with tapping. So we play the first note and the third note of the G major scale with our fretting hand, and we tap the 5th with our picking hand. And the same thing for A minor. It's gonna be an A note, then the characterizing interval of the minor scale of the minor chord, which is A to C, so minor third, this is what it's called. So A and C we play with our fretting hand, and the 5th note, the E, we tap with our picking hand. Of course, you can mix those approaches, you can do whatever you like with them, but the important thing is, how do you actually do them? Like, you know the underlying chords, you know the underlying notes within the chords, and you never forget how you can tap. If you forget the shape, you already know the notes, so it's not a big deal. Not like you have to Google the chord diagrams and the arpeggio diagrams when you're going to start improvising. And I do encourage you not to go to the next module directly, but try creating riffs with those 2-note chords. For example, you do a power chord, then you do a minor chord, then you do a major chord, and just, yeah, try creating riffs with your own types of chords with these two-note chords. If you need a little inspiration, well, look at the Metropolis Part 1 song, the intro by Dream Theater. Even if you don't like prog metal, it's very nice to see how John Petrucci used these types of chords. Then you should also be able to play sweep picking arpeggios with the minor 7 and major 7 shapes, and you should be able to play at least a few chords by just tapping them on one string, playing the first note and the second note with our picking hand, with our fretting hand, and the third note with our picking hand.